progressive architect, PA. Really, you're really trolling there, Grandpa, and getting back into the history.
Welcome to Archispeak, a fortnightly podcast about all things architecture. My name is Evan Troxel, and I'm one of your hosts along with Neil Pan and Cormac Phelan. Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in the profession of architecture? Have you ever worked with an architect? Have you ever wanted to be an architect? Maybe you're in school and don't know what you're getting yourself into, or perhaps you know exactly what it's like because you've been working in the profession for a long time, and you know that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Or maybe, just maybe, you're planning on changing the world. Join us as we have a casual conversation about our passion, architecture. It's time for some Archispeak.
Welcome to episode 102 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
And this episode of Archispeak is sponsored by Arcat. Check out all the features they offer over at arcat.com. And we'd also like to welcome Archisnapper. We'll talk about each of these sponsors later in the show. But first up, Evan, you have a little announcement to make, right?
That's right. So let's see, in a week from now, but only a few days after this podcast goes live. So right now we're recording, let's see, it's November 3rd, but this podcast goes live on the 6th, which means 4 days after that, on the 10th, I will be doing a talk at AIA Orange County about ARE hacks and about just how to kind of get yourself ready to pass the ARE licensing exam. So if anybody is listening to this podcast who thinks they could come to that, I would love to see you there and meet you. So head on over to the link in the show notes, and we will provide that at archispeakpodcast.com. And on the right side of every page, you can click on a link and enter your name and email address to subscribe to those show notes. You'll get a link to that, and you can get all the details about AIA Orange County and that particular event so that you can sign up and let them know that you're going to be coming. And like I said, head over to archispeakpodcast.com and subscribe to the show notes, and we will mail you all the links that we send out with every episode that comes along. And that's all we do with that email list. So it pays to subscribe because you can follow along with everything we're talking about. So tonight we were going to talk about, we got a listener who wrote in and asked if we've ever done a show about our favorite architectural magazines or periodicals. And so I guess we're going to try to answer that question the best to our ability. So let's just jump into that and talk about, I guess maybe something kind of appropriate to talk about here is the changing landscape of architectural magazines and periodicals. So have you guys seen a trend over the last years about this kind of stuff?
Other than the magazines going away?
I was going to say the shift from paper to digital, when even
exactly,
and even all of the kind of like mainstay subscriptions, like once it switched from Record to Architect Magazine, you used to get the AIA subscription when you got paid for your membership, and you got your magazine, and more I see that renewals come in as shifting to a digital option only rather than digital and print. It used to be where even if you didn't have the subscription, there'd be at least like 15 or 16 magazines floating around the office that no one wanted, so you could pick it up and just not have to worry about paying for your subscription because there was going to be somebody who didn't want theirs. So now, fortunately, you have to have one so that you can log in and read it online, which is probably honestly a lot better because the cool thing about it is that they're searchable, taggable. This is dating myself, but there used to be where have stacks and stacks and stacks, and probably still have stacks and stacks of old architectural or architecture magazines or progressive architecture or all these other different magazines, and then go through them, sit down and go through them, and then just kind of clip out articles or images and stuff that I thought were, things that I would like to revisit later on down the road, or something that was inspiring. And so I'd have almost like scrapbooking of different projects and stuff. And now the cool thing and the easy thing about it is that we can bookmark everything, and it actually makes it easy because I was having to I think in one of the recommendations that we were given one time, I was talking about the add-on for Google Chrome add-on, and I, for some reason, blanking on which was the add-on. But basically, it was just an architectural tab that every time you opened up a new tag, it had a new project on there. And so I had like thousands of tabs open. And then I just happened to look. Once you get to the end of the article, you can save it. I'm like, oh, wait. So now I don't have to open up 15 or 16 different tabs, trying to basically essentially do what I used to do, which was the old school bookmarking. Now all I have to do is click and save.
Yeah, I think that was ArcDaily, right?
Yeah, ArcDaily. Thank you.
I want to go back there for a second. Progressive architecture, PA, really? You're really trolling there, Grandpa, and getting back into the history. That's an old magazine.
Some of the earlier offices that I worked for, they had, really, really old subscriptions to like everything. Right. And I used to, they were throwing them out, so I would take them. I thought they were great.
It was a great magazine, actually.
Yeah, it's still to this day, I think is probably one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it seemed like it was more about architecture and not just one big long ad. That's kind of what I like about ArcDaily is that, yeah, you have the sidebar ads and all that other stuff, but you can read about the meat of just the project.
I think it's interesting that with like architecture, you can get the magazine or you can get it digitally. I don't really care to get it digitally. Actually, we get 2 of them here, so actually it gave me an option of not getting it since they recognize that they're sending 2 to the same house. So I was able to not have it, and then just my wife gets it, and then we have the 1 copy here. But I have to admit, I don't read it. And there's a couple of reasons why probably that I don't. The main one is it doesn't have a lot to do with what I do on a daily basis. I mean, my job now and has been in the past, and even when I was working for myself, I was doing remodels and additions, nothing like what you'd read about in those magazines or see in those magazines. And granted, they would publish some really cool stuff, but it didn't really relate to the type of work I was doing. And even now, with working again for a firm, and most of the work I'm doing is right now multifamily production work and single family as well, a little bit of that. And so it doesn't relate to anything in those magazines. I mean, even the products that advertise in those magazines are not products that we would use in the residential market or the residential production market, at least that I work with. And so there's just not much there. And probably because I'm so, I've got a family, I've on the planning commission, I've got a lot of things on my plate. And so I really just don't have time to sit back and enjoy I don't take the time, let me put it that way. I don't take the time to sit back and kind of enjoy the larger world of architecture that is being presented in reading those magazines.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that because of how busy everybody is nowadays, like that's the thing that falls to the bottom of the list. Is, I don't feel like I have time to sit around and read a magazine. I'd rather sit around and read a book where I'm a little more invested in it for a longer period of time, and I can pick it up and put it down. And I feel like magazines are more entertainment. And while I wish I had time for that, I kind of don't, at least at this point right now.
I don't know. I'm a little different. I mean, because I still have all the different email subscriptions to all the different like magazines, Dwell, Architect Magazine, get the online architecture record magazine, Design Boom, that you go on and on, the architecture's newspaper. And so basically all I do is I kind of like flip through the email, and whatever eye candy strikes me, then maybe I'll click on that one and try to learn a little bit more about that particular project. But to me, I think it's all about looking at the aesthetics of what's going on outside of my office, and just kind of, it's almost like, to me, and you said it best, Evan, it's like entertainment. It's almost all of the stuff that I read is just like, what's the latest fashion? And just kind of see, ooh, look, green avocado is in.
Yeah, and I don't mean to demean it at all. I don't mean it in that way. It's more of my personal perception of it than anything. But I think that because I know how much work goes into that kind of thing, right? So I don't want to demean it for that, because those articles are well done.
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. Sometimes you're reading through there, and you're just
no, that's true.
You wonder if they're just writing it as quick as they can, just to have some words accompany pictures. And you were like, well, honestly, the pictures would have just done fine. You didn't really need to say anything. Just give me a little quick bullet points of what the project is. Because I'm finding, and this is me being a little curmudgeon-y, Neil Panish, but
Really?
yeah, really. But I'm finding more and more of all these different articles, and it doesn't matter if I'm reading like an actual news article or an architecture article or something like that. They're really poorly written, and you just wonder.
Well, we all look at the pictures anyway.
You
right?
wonder. I mean, I'm starting to pull an Evan Troxel on everything. Like scrutinizing. I was like, that's not even a word. That period doesn't go there, and just wondering why things got through the editor, how somebody didn't catch that, or he's like like, really,
yeah.
Even I know that word double squiggly lines underneath it and says delete repeated word, but yeah.
What's amazing to me is how cheap magazine subscriptions are, and how like one year I got myself a few on Amazon because they are so cheap and they're great. Like, it's a great kind of guilty pleasure, right, to have these. And I actually didn't read any of them. I got 2 or 3 subscriptions, so I had several magazines piling up every month, and I never read one of them. And then I felt guilty because there was the pile, right, the pile on my desk. And then that guilt was like taking over every time I'd see it. And then I had to hide the pile somewhere. And now it sits in a bookcase somewhere because I can't bring myself to throw them out or recycle them. So it's bad news all around.
I did. I used to keep, I remember cue the old man jokes here, but no, when I first started working, the architect I worked for, he had those magazines. And when I first started, I really didn't know where I was going to end up or what type of work I'd be doing in my career. So I devoured those magazines, although I probably just spent most time looking at the pictures. So I probably wasn't looking at the copy to edit it, as Cormac was just saying, or proofreading, I guess I should say. But I would keep most of those magazines. And after a while, I had piles and piles of PA and architecture and record and a number of those main magazines of the time. And after a while, it got to be a real pain in the butt to be moving them around. And so I eventually started, I filtered them out at first, and I only kept like record houses, right? Each year there'd be a record houses issue, and I'd kept those. And then after a while, I think I just got rid of all of them. So I had nowhere to put them. Eventually, I just couldn't keep them. And going back to what you were saying, Cormac, about finding things, right? I mean, you could go, oh, I think I saw this, but I have no idea where it's at. And so finding it, you just couldn't do. And so then they just sat there. And then I was like, well, I haven't looked at these things in a decade. I don't think I need them anymore. So it was toss. And I think that's true for a lot of things that we have nowadays. I mean, most of our periodicals or even newspapers, right? It's all online. We can get those articles. We look at them online, and thankfully, because of economics that we're not really going to get into on this topic tonight, but it's for the most part free. You can read these articles, and you're good to go.
And to me, the most important part about it is the shareability of everything, right? Because a lot of times I'll read something and I think, oh, this applies to my friend Tom, or this applies to my friend Mark, or whatever, and I can send it to them, which is a lot harder. I mean, if they're in another office. If they're in the same office, it's not a big deal to drag a magazine over to them, but it's so shareable, and that's kind of the economy we live in now, right, is just how shareable everything is. Everything's got a Facebook or a Twitter or an email link on it that you can forward it to somebody else.
So I'm curious, what sort of, if we're not really reading these, clearly we're not really reading the periodicals or magazines much anymore. What are we reading? Are we reading Record? Are we reading other architectural magazines or other sites, right? Or what sort of sites are we reading that might have an architectural flavor or topic to them? I mean, you mentioned Arc Daily earlier, Cormac. Are there others?
The usual suspects. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
what are some of the usual suspects that you guys are listening or reading?
Well, to me, and it doesn't matter as much the title of the site, because there's, I think everybody already knows the Dezines and Design Milk and Architizer and Arc Daily and all that stuff. I think what matters more to me is the community that lives there and who shows up. And that's one of the things, like Archinect, for instance, has such a strong community. And because that part of it is also searchable, and it's not just formatted around the content that gets posted by the editors, but gets posted by the users too, I think it's a much more vibrant place. So things like Archinect or Reddit, if you go to the Reddit architecture section, where there is a community of people posting things and talking about them, those things to me seem to be the most revisited things on my list. So even Facebook groups like Entree Architect, I mean, that's something that I go to all the time because people are posting real questions that apply to my everyday life. Like you were saying, Neil, how the magazine doesn't have stuff in there that applies to what you do. I like to go to the places that do also. So Facebook groups, things like that I've actually subscribed to, where it's a group of people who are in similar situations as I am. I think things like that tend to grab my attention when I need to go out looking for something. Otherwise, for me, it's like searches, right? And not necessarily Google. I found like Flickr searches are really good, or Pinterest searches, but those aren't really, it's not something I go to on a guilty pleasure kind of a thing. It's just stuff I go to when I need it. More guilty pleasure for me would be like Instagram, like all the architecture stuff I follow on Instagram. It's just kind of a curated feed.
Yeah, I pretty much did the same thing. I mean, I do, like I said, I already kind of like rattled off plenty of them, just like Evan did, and I seem to probably read more of those news, the daily newsletters from Arc Daily and Design Boom and all these other ones, but I still like to sit down with the magazine, even though I'm probably breezing through it. I mean, we still get both Record and Architect magazine in the office, and I sit there and I kind of still breeze through those. Plus, we also get the periodicals that are more in tune with what we're doing. There's like the colleges and academic type architecture magazines. I don't think I could really add much more than what Evan just said.
I used to get magazines like Dwell. I feel like you were saying earlier, Cormac, it's like feels like 75-80% ads now, and it really bugs me. Really a turnoff. And I get it; they're trying to make money doing what they do. So I don't know if I can blame them or not, but it's a real turnoff.
I think we've shifted. I mean, we aren't necessarily reading the magazines anymore, and I think even with like the more recent relaunch of Dwell on there, making a bigger push for like online subscriptions and things like that, where you get more content and more articles and things like that through their online subscription. I think it's more the fact that just if they want to keep putting out print magazines, people aren't buying them. I used to remember that. I think I just got an email from Architecture Record asking me to sign up and subscribe. And I can remember when Architectural Record used to be like over $100 a year for subscription. And, people would like happily buy it. I mean, I can't remember what the sticker price was, but I mean, it was like $8 or something like that per issue. And now they're offering it for like $12 for the entire year. I'm like, wow, that's like how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so since we're talking about periodicals, let's take a minute to talk about our sponsor. What is the one thing that we do in our practice? Search the internet for content, right? That's what we're talking about right now. Well, we want to let you know about arcat.com. Arcat is an online resource devoted to bringing you content to the building professional. They have huge libraries that you can access, and they don't hit you up for subscriptions. Hey, what was I just talking about? Subscriptions. There are no fees, and they won't make you register for download to content. We've all been there. You finally find the right file, and you get blocked with registration pop-ups, and you think, thanks for wasting my time. I'll go look for it somewhere else. Arcat's BIM library is really second to none, and available in just about any format you need. In fact, their entire BIM library is formatted to at least the latest 5 versions of Revit. Their CAD library has thousands of CAD details, and if you need specs, the Arcat library has the most consistent library you'll find. Every single spec is written in a 3-part CSI format. There is so much more on their site, including catalogs, videos, and a spec wizard. Go to arcat.com or download their app to check it all out. It is a great free resource, and you don't have to register to use. Check out Arcat today at arcat.com, and don't forget to provide feedback on their site. There's a button on the right-hand side on every page. Have a suggestion to make Arcat better? Click the feedback button and let them know, and tell them that Archispeak sent you. Thanks for Arcat for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak. Now let's get back to the conversation.
I think one of the things that's interesting is we've mentioned several different sites and periodicals or that have sites, but I thought, Evan, you mentioned something that I find very interesting and something that is absorbing some of that time that we might otherwise have spent in the past, say, reading the magazine. And you mentioned the community. You mentioned Reddit or the Entree Architect Facebook group. I mean, there's so much conversation that's happening on, at least say on the Entree site, that is so pertinent to everything that we do, because it's architects that are asking questions about how to be an architect, or some aspect of being an architect, either running their own business, or how do you deal with billing, or I've got this client that is asking me this, how should I handle it? And I find it interesting that these community groups are really taking up maybe some of that time, not in a bad way here, but they're really absorbing that time that we might have spent, say, offline reading those magazines and maybe doing some of that other work. I don't know, maybe that's not true, but I find that I'm also doing that too. It's like, oh, well, somebody has a question. I think I have an answer for that, and I feel obligated to try and respond to that. Or I want to respond. I want to try and be helpful. I want to share, sort of like what we're doing with this podcast. We're trying to share our knowledge or our information, and sometimes our just complete babbling, idiocy, but it's we're trying to share. And I think that's something that the magazines aren't providing, that's being provided somewhere else.
Well, yeah, it's going from a consuming to a two-way street, right? So we all have the opportunity to give as much as we take, or some percentage of each one of those. Whereas before it was a one-way street.
Yeah, but some of the streets are sort of still one way, because as good as, like, say, I'm not even going to say them by name, but anyway, as good as some of the conversations are, they're pretty limited to like small firms, sole practitioner type stuff. And like, so for you, Neil, you came from that world, and yeah, you're working for a larger firm, but you are still doing more residentially oriented projects.
Sure.
I'm doing something completely different, and those type of conversations have absolutely no application to me. I mean, the conversation is great, and some of the insight is fantastic for, if I was doing a side project or something, which I don't ever have time to do anymore, thankfully. So the conversation to me doesn't help me. And what's interesting is that's why I still actually read the magazines, is because they're at least talking about, maybe not in a conversation way, but they're still talking about the projects that make sense to me, because I'm doing larger scale projects, bigger projects, several, hundreds of thousands of square feet type projects and stuff. And so those are the things that I'm looking for from a commercial side of things. I know that LinkedIn has plenty of conversation groups and stuff like that, but I kind of find those even still kind of one-way conversations. It's, somebody wants to just say something and doesn't really welcome conversation.
Well, the periodicals, I feel like for the most part, are publishing projects that are out of the reach of a lot of people, right? That's probably the major complaint.
Always.
On the other hand, I kind of feel like, where would architecture be without those projects? And so while people complain about them and the complexity and the budgets and they're out of this world kind of thing, I also feel like they're kind of keeping the dream alive. Right? That's how I categorize them.
That's the way I always look at those, is that they're more just about inspiration. It's like, oh, you can do something like that, really? Okay, and sometimes I even like to reverse engineer. It's like, okay, so this guy probably had, let's say, $500 a square foot type, budget or something. How can I do something similar to that for $100 a square foot? That's where I kind of have the fun challenges, trying to figure out how to do something maybe high style architecture for the beer budget.
Well, other than just record and architecture and some of the other larger publications that we've mentioned, and I know we sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, but there are also very market specific periodicals that are out there as well. And like Residential Architect or Residential Architecture, I think it is. And they focus strictly on residential and oftentimes on production. And so there is that out there. And we mentioned Entree Architect, and there's specific types of conversations that happen there. But I'm sure there's other groups out there that are talking about the type of work that you're doing, or that Evan's doing, or that I'm doing as well. So there are groups that will do all of those things. It's just a matter of being a part of that group and, spending the time to do that. And I think spending the time doing that is taking away the time that we might be otherwise looking at the pretty pictures of other magazines.
Well, the difference is, and the beauty of, sites like Entree Architect and other kind of outlets like that is you're getting a collection of small firm sole practitioners together and creating a community as if you were in a large firm studio. And so where Entree Architect has created basically the water cooler chat for a bunch of guys that are working in their own places throughout the country, I've got the water cooler at my office kind of thing. I've got the pods that I can walk around and I can talk to other people that basically are doing the same thing I'm doing and talk to them about whatever it is that I'm struggling with, or, feel like talking about, or, hey, did you see this project? What do you think about that kind of thing? And so you remember this. It's just, when you're working out of your house, you don't have anybody to talk to. You don't have, that outlet of sitting there saying, hey, I was thinking about this particular design option, and you don't have anybody to bounce off of. And so communities like that are fantastic for being able to do stuff like that. Whereas in the studio, you have like your studio mates to sit and talk to. I always found that, I remember when I stopped working for myself and I started working for a larger firm, and I was interviewing and I was showing them a project that I did, and I won an award for it, but they were just like, I kind of have a feeling that you did this on your own without really kind of like talking to other people, because, maybe you would have done this or that. And I'm sitting there looking at him, and we're kind of basically doing a design critique of, a project of mine that's already built and everything else. And I'm like, this is actually good. This is probably what I was missing to kind of enrich, some of my projects. And that's what I like about those things. But that's kind of what I like to get out of these periodicals and stuff.
Hey, well, let's take a quick break and let's talk about how we can make our projects better. I mean, that's during construction, that's always a problem, right? So we have a sponsor here that can help provide a solution for architects and engineers to up to half the time they spend on field reports and punch lists. So if you ever had that problem, you get out to a job site, you've got to do your field report and do all this, and then you kind of maybe scribble it down on your notepad and you take it back to no. Check out Archisnapper, archisnapper.com. With Archisnapper software, you can just forget about that camera in the notepad. You can draft and access your reports on site all through the app. You can draw and sketch, annotate different things, and all of this information is automatically numbered and classified. And then it's all uploaded to the cloud. It synchronizes securely to the cloud. Once you get back to the office, you can send it all out. It's all automatically numbered. It saves you time. And that's one of the most important things we have, because we all bill by time, right? And so if we can save time in having to deal with this, Archisnapper provides a great tool to help us save that time. So it's simple, quick, and secure. And now it's used by over 2,000 architects worldwide and counting. So this is a true tried and tested app. So check out archisnapper.com. And if you go to our website at archispeakpodcast.com/episodes/102, we'll have a special link in there that you can get to their site and help out the show at the same time. So check out archisnapper.com and let them know that Archispeak sent you. So guys, what else about periodicals that we still like, or do we care? We talked earlier about the fact that we're not even subscribing. We're getting them digitally. Do we still want the paper?
They're glamour magazines, and you look at the pretty pictures, and you know, and that's why I still like to pick them up and flip through them and all that other stuff.
I think what's cool about them is that it's still kind of a rite of passage for architects. So architects are striving to get their projects in those, where it's easy. You can publish your own projects on your own website and get them, hopefully syndicated to other websites or whatever. I think that's maybe a little bit easier. That's definitely the system that's in place. But you still have to kind of go through the gatekeepers to get it into a paper periodical. And so to me, there's a little bit higher of a bar there maybe, or at least that's my perception. And so I think that you kind of have to hit some kind of a quality level to make that happen. And so there's definitely an appeal to that. It is a little more exclusive, it feels like.
Yeah, there is. We've talked about all the periodicals, both digital and in magazine form and stuff like that. But there is the one periodical that still exists, and to me personally, because you were talking about rite of passage and trying to get published and stuff like that, and I think like these Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times and stuff still have architecture and design sections, and still have architecture critics and stuff that are out there writing about projects, writing about buildings and things like that I think are probably even more scrutinized on getting projects in there. Do you guys got any opinion on like still the old-fashioned print media?
I see it. I don't really. No, I mean
it's still digital. But.
No, well, yes, exactly. But the San Francisco Chronicle here in the San Francisco Bay Area, they do have an architectural section. I don't recall how often they do articles. Maybe it's just once a week or something. But they do have somebody that does that, and I don't see it that often because I'm not really looking at that particular paper, much to their dismay, I'm sure. But I don't really see it. But I also see something that can be important that does kind of, you think might have that high bar as well. But there are some local like magazines. Here in the Bay Area, we have one, I can't remember the exact name, but it's like it covers a particular section here in the Bay Area, and they do show interior design and other designs.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's these little like local type of periodicals that will cover architecture or the architectural related design field. And so there's those. And I think, as Evan said earlier, there probably is a higher bar, right? Because anybody can start a website and publish your own work, and that's great. And we all do that. But to get somebody else to publish your work in their either magazine or on their site is really great. I mean, we do that for the show, right? I mean, we get mentioned by different publications. Actually, Archisnapper, our sponsor, mentioned us in a blog post that they had about architectural podcasts. So, what do? We link to that. We publish that as well. It's an honor for us. And then I'm sure it's an honor for anyone who gets their work published in those.
Yeah. I think that the things that you're mentioning, Cormac, have a great place because they're a voice. They're a consistent voice. Kind of like the reason people listen to podcasts, right? Because they're listening for those people's voice or opinions about a thing. And so when you're talking about architectural critics, like Christopher Hawthorne in the LA Times is one that I know in our office, people are always wondering what he's going to write next about projects that are of importance in our area. And so when it comes to Zumthor's museum that's going to happen in La Brea Tar Pits area and the new George Lucas Museum in Los Angeles, and I'm just kind of scrolling through LA Times. He's talking about the new African American Museum in DC. Even if it's not in our area, people tune in for that voice, that consistency, and what kind of weaves all of his stories together, and what makes a voice popular. And I think people look forward to that kind of thing. So I could see how the ones that you're talking about are still held important because it is a particular writer with a voice.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I know that the Washington Post, the critic goes on the local NPR station a lot and talks about local, about exactly what you're talking about. What are some of the local projects going on that, tend to be national high profile projects as well, but, they're also kind of interest to us. Neil, you actually also mentioned, like things that are local to the San Francisco Bay Area. And, we've got like, I was just thinking like, well, yeah, I think we have stuff like that. And like we have the Washingtonian magazine and Bethesda magazine, and both of them, interestingly enough, seem to be geared towards like interior design, and they've got a lot of advertisements about architects and interior designing and things like that. So it's kind of like a at home in Bethesda or at home in Washington, D.C. type slant towards these magazines. So it really does have a lot of like what's happening architecturally within the area. And so I think those are as critically important as some of the more national stuff that's more geared towards us, but the more local stuff, including even the newspaper, that has an access to architecture that isn't just solely stuck for just architects. It's for everybody. So that was kind of what I was thinking when I was asking you guys that, is that these are still like the local architecture critic for the local paper, which happens to be, the Washington Post, is Pulitzer Prize winner. So I mean, it's just, so he's not just talking, he's waxing poetic about architecture, just like we love to do.
And I would maybe just wrap up by saying that there's still something about paper, right? I just posted a blog post this week on my site about why I did a paper version of my book. Originally, I wasn't planning on doing that. I was just going to do an ebook. And so when I did decide to do a paper one, and then I actually had it printed, and then I actually held it in my hands, it's an amazing thing. And you guys may remember, like, when Wired magazine came out,
yeah,
and they printed that cover on that heavy matte
Yeah.
stock, and you held it, and it felt amazing. And there's something about that. And like, those are the ones you don't throw away, the good stuff, right? So I wish magazines still had that level of quality. I know why they don't, because it's a tough business. So I get it, but there was something about that, and I think there still is something about being able to tear a page out of a magazine and put it up on your magnet board, or send it over to somebody, or fold it into a paper airplane and fly it to the next cubicle or whatever. But I think there's still something to that is lost on the web.
Completely agree. All right. Well, hey, before we go, I want to give a quick shout out to ARCAT. Check out all the features they offer at arcat.com for sponsoring this episode. And thanks to Archisnapper as well. Check out the Archisnapper application and service over at archisnapper.com. And thanks to them for sponsoring this episode. And for links to all of our catalog of episodes, visit our website at archispeakpodcast.com. At the site, you can also sign up for our newsletter. Evan mentioned that at the beginning of the show. We don't send out anything but just the episodes and all of the links that I am busily writing during the recording of this show, actually, to include. So make sure you get that so that you can get links to all the different things and people that we mentioned during this episode. And so don't forget that between episodes, join us in conversation by leaving comments at the website or over on our Facebook page or Twitter. Links to all of those can be found by visiting the one site, archispeakpodcast.com. And before we go, I just want to also remind everyone who's listening, if you enjoy the show, go over to iTunes, make sure you rate the show. You don't even have to write a review if you don't want to, one sentence or something or nothing at all, but just add the star rating there. It really helps to get the show out on iTunes and raises us up the ladder a little bit so people find out about the show. So if you enjoy listening, go do that for us over at iTunes. Just search for Archispeak Podcast and you'll find us there. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
You have to walk it, you can start now, or you can hang your head in despair. It's the only road to take you there. They may tell you that you'll never recover, baby. I've learned one thing or another about you. It's the only road to get you there. And if they don't know how to treat a lady, maybe you can teach them how to act. They could use a little bit of discipline and a hand on the backside, baby. Let's pretend you're doing the right thing. And while we're at it, have the opposite day. Some like to hug, some leave a bruise, some need to go. I'm ready for you. On once again, hey, on. I think you learn it escapes on, greats on the real world. It manufactures glory for the feeling distractions. Photos and truth like a tractor, a cracked actor, a mother of pearl. And if they don't know how to hold a woman, maybe you can put them back in their place.